All right. So, episode one. Things started out innocently enough. Rake and his daughter Tiva were on a routine hunt. They go hunting every morning. They're elves that live out in the woods. Um they they're bonded to one tribe that they're from, but they live alone amidst between like three different tribes, and they go hunting and they supply food for the tribes, help supply food for the tribes. So they go hunting just about every morning, and then once a week they travel to the towns and deliver what they've accumulated over the week. And we're in the middle, we're in the beginning of winter at this point. So the snow had just fallen the previous night, and they stumbled upon some tracks and they followed the tracks into this clearing, and it was a bloody scene where it looked like one animal had pursued another animal and attacked that animal, hunter prey type of thing. Well, while Tiva she's kind of going through, Rake trained her as a hunter, so he's like kind of giving her a pop quiz, and she's kind of monitoring the scene or kind of playing the scene out and doing a little forensic files on it. And as she's doing that, um, Rain is ambushed from behind by a snow leopard that was in a tree behind him. Um, that is where that's where the staging of this whole series ends. At that point, everything else that happens is all based on the Oracle. Um, so the snow leopard pounces and actually failed the roll, and Rain was pinned down. He was hit and pinned down. Um, the snow leopard, by the way, was out of place. He's typically they live far to the north. So he was trying to play over in his mind as well what it was doing so far south. Was it food shortage, yada yada. Anyway, during the course of the battle, him and Tiva eventually dispel the snow leopard, but he finds Tiva wounded by an arrow through the back of through her back. She's wounded. He runs to her and drags her to safety. He doesn't see any assailant at the moment, but he can tell the general direction from the arrow and how she was slumped over. So he gets her to safety, but in the process he had left his bow behind and her bow behind. He was pinned by the leopard, so he lost his weapon. And Tiva, we did a roll to see if she even, like, it was hooked around her arm, but she had not. So he surveyed the area and spotted the assailant, the attacker, and the attacker was still stalking him. So he managed to rush out from behind cover to go scramble to get a bow, get back to cover, and then another battle ensued. During the process, another failed roll. The string broke on his bow. It was actually he managed to grab Tiva's bow, so he pulled too hard on the string, snapped the bowstring, had to scramble again to get his other bow, but the assailant was prepared for that, and the battle, the strikes both, they fired back and forth at each other eventually, and finally Rake defeats the assailant, but it was too late. Tiva bled out, succumbed to her wounds. These were the course of the rolls. There was some very drastic rolls. Bad. I was rolling horrifically against myself. So he vows. The elves vow by revealing themselves. It's a vow of revelation. They remove their mask and they vow and they reveal themselves. That's how they swear their vow. So he swears a vow to Tiva that he's going to avenge her death and find out what happened. Meantime, he prepares her body, and then he goes and they're about 2 hours away from home, so he's not going to leave the scene without investigating. So he investigates the scene. He finds out that the snow leopard was just a normal snow leopard, but he was trained by something, and the assailant was actually an undead of unknown type. I think it could have been a shadow or wraith or something along those lines. He's a horror. But through his knowledge of the tribes, of the areas, he was able to discern that the bow and the arrows were of a unique craftsmanship from far to the north, Myserv, which is way up here in section 1. So he brings Tiva home, sleds her home, and over the course of the next week, he's recovering from his wounds and buries her. He's grieving during the whole process, and then he goes to leave he's going to go travel now to the north to investigate. So as he's leaving, he takes Tiva's mask to keep her beside him. He stops at Thorthir's hometown. They know nothing of the impending doom. They're saddened by the news, of course. Tiva was bonded with them as well. So he begins his journey, and in between Thorthir and Myserv is Rake's brother, Siak. We had already determined that Rake's brother was in that section in 3, like before. He was in section 3. So this just happened to be on the path to Myserv. So he decides to stop at Siak's home. It was a very simple journey. And then to relay the news that his niece had passed and what happened, and to see if he could get any news from Siak and possibly bring him along. However, Siak and Rake had rough times. Siak is an outcast from Thorthir. He was accused of stealing food during the winter months. Rake knew that was not possible. It's completely out of Siak's character. However, Rake would not abandon the village. So Siak took that as Rake taking the village's side, and there's some bad blood. Their bond was broken at that point. Siak leaves and moves himself to Viscos. So he has an uneventful journey to Siak's house. He gets to Siak's house, and he stays there for a few days, discussing the situation. And Siak was saddened by the loss. He was brutally horrified by the loss as well. And he's starts looking at the bigger picture thing. However, when it comes to the point where he didn't have any information either about about anything coming from the north, but at that point, Rake asks Siak if he would accompany him. Siak denies Rake's request. And Rake is embittered by this at first, but Siak is more adamant about what had happened. He just can't let go of the past. So they go back and forth, and eventually it comes to blows. And of course, the role is you lose something important, or something important is broken. So during their altercation, it came to blows, and at one dramatic moment, Tiva's mask snaps in half. and they both stop and they stare at it, and they are in disbelief at what just happened. And Rake is, at that point, he is furious with Sayok. He just looks down, he grabs the pieces of Tiva's mask and storms out of Sayok's home, grabs his pack, and just leaves. He goes on his voyage to the north. Meanwhile, Sayok at that moment realized what an asshole he's been and is trying to plead to his brother, Rake, stop, please, I'm sorry, but Rake's not having any of it. So Rake leaves, and Sayok is his we left him at home. Um, Suffice it to say, because of that outcome, it's a possibility that Sayok does follow and track Rain in case he might have had a change of heart. So if that opportunity ever presents itself, it was a huge dramatic moment, and it was a wow moment, and it was very cool. Um, anyway, Rake travels to the north. He finds at his first waypoint, he discovers a cave um, overlooking the river, but he has no time to investigate it, as curious as he may have been. So he ventures into the forest, and on his first evening there, he starts setting up camp, and he is accosted and held fast by a druid that was in the woods that didn't trust Rake's presence and started questioning him. And he had the vines and the roots had all wrapped around Rake, and he was unable to really resist anything that the druid did. But he was able to persuade the druid that he was there. The druid had heard is very well aware of what's been going on, and the situation became worse, is what the roll was, because I failed the second journey roll. And what it came up, preserve destruction was my action and theme, which are complete opposites. So that's why we came up with the druid, and destruction is the undead forces are actually, it's not just a isolated incident. It's pretty much the whole town and or the village, the tribe of Myserv has been overrun, and either overrun or converted to undead. The source unknown, but there's now a lot of undead haunting the woods, and the woods are a lot darker and dismal place. He eventually convinces the druid that he is going to get to the bottom of this. He swears a vow to the druid that he will bring back more information regarding it. The druid isn't very confident in that Rake's going to be able to accomplish anything because of the nature of the evil. But the druids are trying to fight it as well. So we start today at the beginning of this morning, and we have to continue our journey to Myserv.